We're Nate and Lacey, and this is our story. We started our full-on consistent journey with the Lord and our faith about 2 years ago. We became parents at the age of 19, and that's all we knew was taking care of our kids. So at that point, once our youngest left, I started just trying to find a new way of life without the kids there. And around the same time, I had lost my job of over 20 years. So was really, really lost for a little bit there. And then my mother-in-law and good friends encouraged me to start coming to church. And that's when I found Movement Church. Movement Church has really helped in helping me with my walk in faith and that feeling lost and just having faith and letting those anxieties go. I am more than grateful that I have found this opportunity. I had invited Nathan a few times to go with me, and he declined a few times. And then one morning, he was looking a little down, and I just said, why don't you just come with me? Just do it. And he did. He came with me, and he's been going full force since then.
So my journey as a Christian started in my early teen years. I've always had faith. I've always prayed. I've always known Jesus. I just kind of lost my way a little bit. I felt it was time for me to reconnect with the Lord and get a lot closer in my faith. So I started attending Movement Church about 1.5 years ago with my wife and my mom and some family friends. At first when I came, it's like the first time you do anything, you don't feel extremely comfortable. But after the second or third time, I felt like this was my church. This is where I needed to be. I enjoy coming here. I feel like I get a tremendous amount from Pastor Bill and everybody that helps. It's helped me be a better man, be a better person to my wife. And it's just helped me understand that we're a team and God has put us together for a reason, and we're in it for the long haul.
One thing I can say is if you're encouraging your husband or asking your husband to attend church with you, it took me half a year. Keep asking, don't give up, and the Lord is working.
And for all the men out there that feel like they're hopeless or there's nobody out there to help them or to reach out to, there is a lot of God-fearing men out there to mentor you, to lead you in the right path. You just have to be willing to open your heart and let those people help you, and they'll lead you to the right place. I had a lot of inspiration. My brother Ron, my brother Mike, my brother Diesel, my Muay Thai coach. They're all huge inspirations, and you have this persona that, I'm a tough guy, I can handle it myself, I don't need help. Trust me, you do. Everybody needs help. Everybody needs a little push, a little nudge to get closer to the Lord, and I'm extremely thankful that I have those people in my corner. So even though being empty nesters, it's been tough, having kids young and then the kids leaving the house at a young age, it's hard to do, it's hard to watch, but we were blessed 7 months ago with a wonderful grandson, and we're absolutely ecstatic about it, and we couldn't be more blessed. We're the Selters, Movement is our home, and this is our story.
Awesome. Great story. Nate got baptized on Friday night, and it was amazing. As Sarah would say, Friday night was lit. It was on fire. And I'm not even talking about the service yet. I'm just talking about Moreno Valley was lit and on fire. So, we had some people that got evacuated and then some people that were potentially going to be evacuated. And it was kind of a nerve-wracking afternoon and evening. But man, I'm so proud of these firefighters that fight those fires. And these massive planes that drop that fire retardant, just specifically where they want it, and these helicopters, it is really, really something to watch from a distance. But, and to my knowledge, no structures were lost. That was amazing. So let's give it up for all those that fight fires. But anyways, back to the Friday night service. Yeah, it was lit and on fire too. It was amazing. Jerry knocked the ball out of the park. Bertha knocked the ball out of the park. It was amazing. Carrie and her team, over the top, absolutely amazing. I know my opinion is a little bit biased, but I do have such an appreciation for our band and our music here. Well, like I said, I guess it's well, let me restate that. You know, I do have a biased opinion about our band and the music here, and I assume you do as well. Okay, all right. I'm so proud of you for getting involved and being involved, because my son texted me on Friday evening as he and his wife are guest leaders at a local church in Modesto, and he texted and said, you know, how was the worship night? And I said, it was amazing. How about yours? And he goes, well, we did 4 songs. We had a video. People didn't clap. They didn't sing. They just stared. I think it was an older congregation, but I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that our people don't just stand there, stare, and not say anything, but you guys are just crazy. I mean, I think, okay, so today's Easter, right? So, you know, we're here to celebrate. Now, you could choose to celebrate differently, I guess. Like, you might be here today and go, I don't believe in God. I just, you know, I came with my friend or my family. I'm trying to get a free meal, and so, you know, this was part of it. So I came, and I'm just going to grin and bear it and hope for the best. And I'm like, okay, so what do you celebrate? What is it that you celebrate? I mean, it's Easter. What are you going to celebrate if you don't celebrate the resurrection? Do you celebrate the fluffy Easter bunny? I did a little research and I thought, why Easter bunny and eggs? So several centuries ago in Germany, it was called, I think, Osterhaus or something to that, that meant Easter hare, not like hair, H-A-R-E, Easter hare. And according to this tradition, these Easter bunnies, Easter hare, would lay colored eggs. I'm telling you, the stuff that people buy into and say, oh, I could never believe in Jesus. No, that's just crazy. But I can believe in a fuzzy Easter bunny that lays eggs that are colored. Okay? So it almost sounds like Christmas, because the Easter bunny then would deliver these colored eggs to children who behaved themselves. What parents will do to get their kids to listen and to mind them is just bizarre. So, you know, hey, you can celebrate the Osterhaus or whatever it's called in German. You know, you can celebrate that today, but I actually choose to celebrate that the Son of God came to earth, died on a cross on what we call Good Friday, and rose from the dead on Easter Sunday, and that changes everything. Now I choose to worship that. I really feel like probably you do as well. That's why you're here. The Resurrection Sunday, Easter, is like Super Bowl Sunday for the church. The greatest day in the history of humanity, greater than Christmas, greater than any of those particular days. And like Carrie said, do we say, he is risen? Okay, see, I actually think we said he is risen indeed, long before the 90s. But she can't go back before 90. And if that doesn't make sense, ask me after church and I'll explain it. I'll explain it. But these children here in the front that don't know anything about having a 1 as the first digit of a year, they're probably like, oh, this is brand new. He is risen. It's on the screen. It's on the screen. I'm going to give it one more shot. I'm going to say the first phrase on the left. You're going to say the phrase on the right. Got it? He is risen. Awesome. Very good back there. Man, that's amazing. So he's risen, and that's why we're here to celebrate. And you might think, okay, I really can't buy into that. And so if there really is such a thing as a resurrection, okay, so what? So what? What does that event actually change for me? On a random Tuesday when I'm stressed, tired, overwhelmed, anxious, or just trying to get through the day, what difference does that make for me? For some of you, the resurrection is just a story. It's interesting. But if it is real, I suggest to you that it changes everything. Now imagine with me that it's Easter Sunday. It's early Sunday morning. It's dark and it's quiet and it's a heavy morning, and you're out for a walk and you see a group of women heading somewhere with urgency. They're not celebrating. They're grieving. They're actually carrying burial spices because they expect to find a dead body. Hope's gone. Jesus is dead. And the story's over. You decide to join with them and walk with them to the tomb, and then all of a sudden everything breaks expectation. The stones rolled away, the tomb's open, the body's gone, and now it's just sheer confusion, fear, and maybe shock. And then suddenly 2 men appear clothed in dazzling robes, and according to Luke 24, they ask, "Why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive? He isn't here, he's risen from the dead. Why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive?" Now that question didn't just confront them, that question confronts us as well. Because we're still doing that today. We're still looking for life in things that can't give it. Now, before we move on, I want to deal with a question that you literally could be asking in your own mind at this point. You could be thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, but is it actually true? How do we know that all of this that you're going to talk to us about is actually true? Because some people would say, oh, you Christians just argue from the Bible, but maybe the Bible's not even true. All right. I'm saying that this whole resurrection thing is not just something biblical. It is a historical fact. It's not just some emotional thing that people get worked up into believing. I want to share with you some thoughts from a guy that was, at one point in his life, early years, probably up into 30-something maybe, he was an atheist. He was an investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. His wife became a Christian, and he decided he was going to prove that she was crazy. This whole Christianity thing was nuts, and he started this 2-year investigation. And then he's written several books about this. He's since become a believer. He's had a couple movies. There's a movie coming out, not in the too distant future, but he sort of summarizes how we might know that the resurrection is actually true using 4 words that begin with the letter E. And Easter is not one of them, but it works. Easter and the 4 E's. Number 1, execution. There had to be an execution, that Jesus was really dead, not mostly dead, not just unconscious, but D-E-A-D, dead. History shows that he was executed by the Roman Empire, the most efficient killing machine in the ancient world. They didn't make mistakes. They crucified people, and crucified people died of asphyxiation. They died of shock. They died of blood loss. Now, in the 4th gospel of the Bible, in the New Testament in John 19, we learn a few things about Jesus as he hung on a cross. Eventually, he died. But sometimes these efficient killing machines would help speed the process up. So what would happen is the person's, feet are kind of together. There's a nail going into this upward beam on a cross. And the way people ultimately died was from asphyxiation. They couldn't get enough air, but you'd have to push down. As painful it would be on that nail at your feet, as go through your feet, lift yourself up to get a breath. So if they wanted to speed the process up, they just broke your legs. Now you couldn't lift yourself up and death would come quickly. But when they got to Jesus, they didn't break his legs, not because they forgot, but because he was already dead. Another thing that we learned was they stuck a spear in his side and out came blood and water, which would be a further indicator that Jesus was actually dead. Now, like I said, this is not just a biblical thing that we've come up with, but even non-Christian historians back in the day, like Tacitus, who was Roman, or Josephus, who was Jewish, they corroborated this story as well and confirmed it, that Jesus truly was a real person and he died on a cross. There is historical consensus here, even outside of the Bible. Now, there's some that have come along, they try to suggest some other things. Maybe he fainted and just kind of came to a little bit later. But think about this. You got a man who was brutally beaten, who's been crucified, who's been pierced, whose body is placed in a tomb. He doesn't just all of a sudden wake up, unwrap himself, roll away a multi-ton stone, overpower guards, and then say, man, that was a rough weekend. That's just not what happened. And then you'd have to go further to then convince people that you were really dead when you weren't. Now, the person that we're singing about today and worshiping today is not someone who barely survived death. This is one who actually defeated death. So we've got an execution. There's historical evidence for that. Number two, we've got an empty tomb. It was a fact that the tomb was empty, and everything in Christianity hinges on this point right here. The tomb was empty. Now, it wasn't in a mysterious, undisclosed location. Everybody knew where the tomb was, so it wasn't like it was out somewhere nobody knew, but it was in a known location. It was secured by these killing machine guards, and on Easter morning, on that Sunday morning, the tomb was empty. History would confirm that there were women who went to the tomb and found that the tomb was empty. I know you're asking, and some of you have heard this before, you're asking, why did women go and why were they the first ones to see that the tomb was empty? Well, that's very easy, because if you want word to spread, get a woman involved and boom, there it goes. Hey, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just telling you what's in the scripture. Now, I think God literally chose these women because in that culture, their testimony didn't have a whole lot of value. So if you were going to try to make up a story about some guy that rose from the dead, you sure wouldn't have as one of your key points to verify that the tomb was empty women. It just wouldn't happen that way. Even the opposition admitted it. Even those that were in opposition to Jesus, they didn't say, well, the body's still in there. No, they said they thought the disciples stole it. Now, if the disciples stole it, that must mean the tomb was in fact empty. Because if the body of Jesus was still in the tomb, Christianity would have ended right there at its birthplace, right there in Jerusalem immediately. All they had to do is produce a body and game over. The third E is eyewitnesses. Did anybody see this? Can anybody corroborate this? And I think this is where the argument for the truth of the resurrection becomes overwhelming. Because Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, didn't appear just one time, but he appeared multiple times. He certainly appeared to Mary Magdalene there at the tomb. He appeared to his disciples, 11 of them at the time. He appeared to 2 people walking home on the road to Emmaus. He, a week later, appeared to Thomas, that we call Doubting Thomas. And then on one occasion, he appeared to over 500 people at one time. Now, these weren't ghost sightings or vague visions or just emotional experiences. Were they hallucinations? If you're going to buy into the hallucination line, then you've got to believe that over 500 people had the exact same hallucination at the same time. Probably didn't happen that way, but these were in fact physical encounters. They were physical encounters because people talked to Jesus, Jesus talked to them. People ate with Jesus, Jesus ate with them. People touched Jesus, Jesus touched people. And then we see through the disciples, these guys that had been with him 2.5, 3 years, you would have thought they had understood what was going on, but apparently not, because after his death, they're hiding out in a secret, undisclosed location. They're in a state of panic. They're thinking about just kind of denying Jesus. Peter actually did, but then all of a sudden, after the resurrection, after Jesus appears to them, all of a sudden, they've got this boldness that they didn't have. They were willing to go public with this message about the resurrection, even if it meant that they would die themselves. Now, most people wouldn't die for something that they know is a lie. Something happened. Now, one of Jesus' disciples was his half-brother, James. Now, imagine that your brother claims to be the Son of God. I mean, that would be pretty bizarre. Jesus claiming to be the Son of God, and you're watching him and you're like, there's no way. James wasn't a believer until after the resurrection. After Jesus rose from the dead, the guy became a believer. His life was forever changed, and he became one of the most prominent leaders in the early church in the first century. After the resurrection, there were eyewitnesses. And then number 4, there's early testimony. This message and this story about the resurrection just didn't kind of get generated and, eventually develop over centuries. No, it actually started almost immediately in the same town that the event happened in. That's pretty bold, because people there in town would have no doubt fact-checked this whole thing, and they could have easily said, this did not happen, but it did. And then shortly after the resurrection, along comes this guy we're introduced to as Saul, who then becomes Paul. He becomes one of the most prominent apostles in the New Testament, wrote several of the books. But he comes out with this early creed that scholars date to within a few years of the resurrection. Paul would say, Christ died, Christ was buried, Christ was raised, and Christ appeared. This is not legend. Legends take long periods of time to develop. This wasn't a legend. This was more of an immediate proclamation. So we put just these 4 E's together. Here's what we have. We have that Jesus was dead, that the tomb was empty, that people did see him alive, and this message began to spread immediately. Now, if you take any one of those alone, it's pretty strong, but together they form a compelling historical case. This faith we're talking about is not some feeling that one has, but it is actually grounded in history, because this is a real event, and this real event demands a real response. What are you going to do with this if it is true? Now, you might again be saying, okay, I'll go along with you for the time being. It's true. But so what? That is the question again. So what? If Jesus rose from the dead, I would suggest that everything changes. But what I hear the angel saying back there to the women, he's still saying today, why are you looking for life in places that can't give it? We're searching for life. We're searching for peace in places that can't give it. We're searching for status. We're searching for all these things through places and things that really can't give it. Some are looking for help, and they try to find it through a substance or through a relationship or whatever, because there's something in all of us, this void, this hole that ultimately wants to be filled with God, but we push God aside. We say, I can't believe that. That's crazy, but I'm going to believe Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Now, there's something in us that only God can fill, but we're searching in all the wrong places. But hopefully, eventually today, that something settles in on you and you realize this is true. Now, the resurrection isn't just proof that Jesus lived. It's power for how we live going forward. So because he is risen, number 1, your past isn't holding you anymore. I mean, let's be honest. People aren't stuck in life because of what's ahead of them. They're stuck in life because of what's behind them. The mistakes they've made, the regrets they have, the shame that they feel. And we don't just remember our past, we rehearse it over and over. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. Now, in the New Testament, in the book of Romans, Paul writes in Romans 4:25, he was handed over to die, meaning Jesus was handed over to die because of our sins. And he was raised to life to make us right with God. To make us right with God. If you were at the last New Testament survey class we had, you know that's the word justification. The essence is the cross is what paid for your sin. The resurrection, in fact, proved that the payment cleared. It was all good. The resurrection is heaven's receipt that your sin is paid in full. You are forgiven. Your past is forgiven. Now, if Jesus had stayed dead, forgiveness would certainly feel uncertain. But because he rose from the dead, your past is not just covered, your past is canceled. Now, unfortunately, some of us are still trying to pay for something that Jesus already paid for. But you don't have to live there anymore. You don't have to carry that guilt that God has already canceled. You don't need to punish yourself anymore. Because if Jesus walked out of the grave, your past doesn't get the final word. He does, and he did. Number two, you have power for what you're facing right now. There's a lot of people who believe in Jesus, but then live like he's still in the grave. Are you one of those? Do you believe in Jesus, but you still live like he's in the grave? That's why people could say, yeah, I have a relationship with God, but then they just seem stuck. They could say, yeah, I'm forgiven, but I'm really frustrated. I struggle with all of that. The resurrection doesn't just mean that Jesus has forgiven you. It also means that he's moved in to you, and that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is now present in your life. Look what Paul writes to the Ephesians in Ephesians 1, starting in verse 19. He says, I pray that you will begin to understand how incredibly great his power is to help those who believe him. It is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in heaven. I mean, you could just spend the rest of the day letting that sink in. The power that raised Jesus from the dead is in you and is available to you. Not sometime like in heaven, somewhere out in the future, but today, like right now. You're not living from empty, you're living from full. It'd be like walking around with your cell phone battery at 1% while carrying a charger in your back pocket. That would just be stupid. Like we walk around like we're with 1% power too, but we've got the power, the same power that raised Jesus in us. That's power that can overcome addictions. That's power that can overcome anxiety. That's power that can overcome those constant feelings of being overwhelmed. There's power that lives in you, and through Christ, you don't have to feel like you are stuck anymore. Number three, your worst moment is not your last moment. The resurrection doesn't remove hard things. If you're hoping that was going to be the case, that's not true. But it does change how you see difficulties in life. Because bad news may still come, life might still hurt, but now the worst thing is never the last thing. And instead of you saying, why has this happened to me? Now you start asking, God, what are you going to do through this? How are you going to use this? What are you going to do through this? Number four, you don't have to live afraid anymore. Underneath most anxiety is this fear of loss, or certainly this fear of death. Now, Jesus just didn't talk about life after death. He actually walked through death and came out alive, which changes everything. And what that means now is that death isn't the end. Maybe you've stood at the graveside of a loved one or a friend who knew Christ and who had experienced God's forgiveness. Death isn't the end. That's not the end. It won't be the end of your story either. It's not the final word. It's not something you should try to work hard to avoid in life. The resurrection didn't just make death less scary, it made it defeated for us. And this resurrection guarantees your ending. Look at what Paul writes to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 15:20. But the fact is that Christ did actually rise from the dead and has become the first of millions who will come back to life again someday. He went first, but we're coming next. He defeated death, and so will we. Death isn't the end anymore. You see, before the resurrection, death was a period. But after the resurrection, death's simply a comma. Like, we know what's going to happen. Have you ever watched a movie that you've seen before? Have you ever watched a sporting event, say a football game or a baseball game, that you already know what happened, that your team won, but now you sit down to watch it again? That's the best way to watch sports because you don't have to get emotionally involved and all worked up. You already know the outcome. That's how it is with us because of the resurrection. We know the outcome. We know that death doesn't have the final word. Number 5, your life isn't just about surviving. It's not like, I just got to figure out how to survive this week. No, the resurrection pulls you out of survival mode. You're not here just to exist, but you are here on purpose. You have a purpose. And that purpose isn't just to sit tight until we go to heaven, but that purpose is to go. The resurrection didn't secure eternity as much as it launched a mission. That's why the Great Commission that Jesus says in Matthew 28:19, he says, go and make disciples. The resurrection turns us from being spectators into being participants. And so this message of Easter isn't, hey, come and see. The message of Easter is really go and tell. It's like if you discovered a cure for the most deadly disease in the world, you wouldn't keep that to yourself going, I just don't want to say anything in case somebody gets offended. You wouldn't do that. The resurrection is something we ought to talk about with our family, at our workplace, in our neighborhoods, in the relationships we're in. We need to start having conversations about that. But let's come back to the question, why are you looking for life in places that can't give it? A lot of the things that we're searching for and trying to find life aren't necessarily bad. But the resurrection does expose the truth for us that if Jesus is alive, then life found in him, not in those things that we typically look for in life, is found in him. So today we celebrate Easter. And again, your question may be, so what? Most people experience Easter like it's an event to observe. Thus, we attend church services. We dress in clothing on that Easter Sunday that we don't dress in any other time of the year. We just try to trick everybody who doesn't come regularly to think this is how we normally dress. As somebody said, oh, you're all dressed up. You got a button-up shirt, no t-shirt. We get all dressed up. We think we're so cool because we're going to get a photo taken at a photo booth. We're all going to smile in the whole world. We all know what it was like at home before you got in the car. There was no smiling there. You were telling your kids, you're going to need a resurrection yourself because I'm about to end your life. Get your shoes on. But anyway, not sure how I got onto that, but it's Easter. So we just come to church, we observe, we listen to a killer band, and then we go home and we celebrate the Easter bunny that laid colored eggs. And now those eggs are actually plastic filled with candy and stuff. But the resurrection was never meant just to be an observed thing, that we just observe it. No, it's meant to be responded to. It's not something that we just celebrate, an event that we celebrate. It's an invitation to step in and get in it. Just a week or two ago, I hired an electrician at my house because we wanted to install a new pool light. I can get into a lot of complicated stuff with you, but pool lights obviously take electricity and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, we're going to run the electrical to a new location. So I bought a pool light with 100-foot wiring. I hired this electrician. He came over and he said, yeah, I think this will reach back there. I measured out at 97 feet, so it was close, but it ultimately worked. I get you that. So that's like a couple weeks ago, and it was blistering hot outside. So this guy comes over, and this particular day, I was not home. Cindy was there, and he came knocking on the door, and he goes, ma'am, is it okay if I get in the pool? Because I've got to put the light in. The light is underwater, right? I got to put the light in. She goes, yeah, no problem. And so he apparently did. He got the light in there, but he didn't have it all connected. So he came back a couple days later and ran the wiring and everything, trenched, ran the wiring and all of that. And I was at work here, and I have security cameras, so I decided, I'm going to see what he's doing at this moment. And I bring up this camera in the backyard as he changes into not a swimsuit. It wasn't anything close to a thong, thankfully. It was a full-on jumpsuit, long pants, long sleeves. And he had bought these swimming goggles. They were still in the package. So he doesn't know that I'm watching, and I'm not going to tell him, and I don't want you to tell him if you ever meet him. But here he comes out in this tan jumpsuit with these goggles. Now, when he gets to the pool water, he could do one of a couple of things. He could just look at the water. He could have a conversation with somebody and go, well, yeah, it's only 72 degrees, pretty chilly. He could have dipped his toe in, which I think he did, and was like, brr. But if he was going to get paid, he was going to have to hook up the light. So I watch him as he steps into the pool, and he's holding on to the side. I'm sure he could swim, but he was so cold. You could just see him, and he gets further and further in, and he has to go under. And I say that to say this. This whole thing about the resurrection is not something to just talk about, not something to look at, not something to even dip your toe in. But if you're going to want the full benefits of the resurrection, you got to get in the water. The real question isn't, did the resurrection happen? The real question is, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to get in? Now, you could be an observer or you could be a responder, and it's always been that way. I hope you would be a responder to the point that you would say, okay, I believe this. I think this could be. I'm going to trust Jesus. I'm going to surrender control of my life to the one who defeated death. Could there be a better one to surrender your life to? And I'm going to begin a relationship with him. I'm going to have a relationship with him. You got to get in the water, get in the pool. Because it's time now to move forward from just, okay, I have this knowledge. Okay, you convinced me a little bit about this. No, it's time to experience the power of the resurrection. That's the whole reason we celebrate Easter, in hopes that you would experience the transformation that can come about in your life because of Jesus' resurrection. Jesus is risen, not just so that you could go to heaven one day, but so that you could live differently starting this day. That you could live differently. Remember, the resurrection isn't just proof that Jesus lived. It's power for how we live going forward. Now, you could hear what I have said, because I'm pretty much done. You could hear all of that and go, okay, thank you, but no thank you. Or you could say, I don't understand it fully, but I want that kind of power in my life. I hope that's where you're at. There's power available to you if you believe. You got to believe that Jesus is who he said he was, that he is the Son of God, and that he actually died on a cross and was placed, his body placed in a tomb. But on that Sunday morning, the stone was rolled away, the tomb was empty, and Jesus had risen from the dead. So what? Well, it can transform your life. It's a matter of you saying, okay, God, I believe. That's really it. I believe. And invite Jesus to come into your life. Say, I want that resurrection power in me, because it's not just something way out there somewhere. No, he wants to dwell in you. The same power that raised him from the dead can live in you, empowering you for the life that you've got to live from here. So I'm going to pray for us, but I would invite you to pray and confess your belief to him and invite him to come into your life if he's not there already. Lord, what an honor it is to celebrate Easter, the greatest day of the year. The truth that we celebrate on Easter, that being the resurrection, is the hinge pin of all of Christianity. If Jesus hadn't risen from the dead, Christianity would be no different than Buddhism or any other ism out there. Their leaders died as well, but did not raise from the dead. The one claim that we make as Christians is that our leader and our Lord did die, but on the third day rose from the dead. And I'm so grateful that that same power that made that happen is the same power that dwells in me. The same power that has forgiven me for a lifetime of screw-ups. The same power that has made me right with God. The same power that is going to help me to go forward in life, and the same power that will ultimately defeat death that eventually awaits me. And I pray that would be the case for all of us today. We celebrate you, and we celebrate the resurrection in Jesus' name. Amen. Look, I'm really glad you came today, even if this isn't a place you come to on a regular basis. Man, we're just grateful for you, that you're here. And whenever you would come, we would love to have you. We'd love to have you come back next week. It's not always about the resurrection. Next week, I'm going to kick off a series called Calm in the Chaos. We all know that life is messy, but our minds don't have to be. We struggle with anxiety. We struggle with all sorts of things. So we're going to tackle that for a few weeks, and I hope you come back and join us. The band's always as great as it was today, we hope that you'll come back. Your kids might not go home with 100 Easter eggs, but as Carrie said, they probably will get sugar in some form before they go. But again, thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to all of you who donated those plastic eggs. I hate to burst your bubble. The Easter Bunny is not real, and he did not bring those Easter eggs. And 100 eggs is no guarantee that your kids are going to behave themselves this afternoon, but that's life. That's why we need resurrection power. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next Sunday.